The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert valley as Colonel James Blackwood completed his daily perimeter check. At 53, his frame remained lean and purposeful, moving with the quiet efficiency that had kept him alive through 2 decades of classified operations. The compound, 5 modified adobe structures nestled against the rocky backdrop of the Chizos Mountains, appeared unremarkable to the rare passing aircraft. That was precisely the point. Blackwood paused at the eastern ridge, binoculars scanning the horizon methodically. The parched landscape stretched for miles, broken only by scattered mesquite and the occasional dust devil. To most, this harsh terrain represented desolation. To Blackwood and his team, it was perfect, a natural barrier few would willingly cross. All clear on the east, he reported into his encrypted radio, a modified military-grade device that couldn't be tracked or intercepted. "Copy that," replied Marcus Shin from the command center buried beneath the main house. "Satellite shows nothing within 20 miles. 5 years ago, when they'd established this sanctuary, people had questioned their choice of location. Now, as cartel violence spilled increasingly over the border, their foresight seemed almost prophetic." Blackwood descended the ridge, boots crunching on loose shale. The temperature would hit triple digits by noon, another deterrent to casual visitors. He entered the main house through the reinforced rear door, nodding to Elena Vasquez, who monitored a bank of surveillance screens. "Anything?" he asked. Elena, former Army intelligence with 3 tours in Afghanistan, shook her head. "Quiet morning. But Ramon's contact in town says there's been unusual movement near Pico Blanco. Vehicles that don't belong." Blackwood frowned. Pico Blanco, a jagged formation 15 miles south, had been vacant for years. Cartel. Likely. Too organized for random traffickers. She pulled up thermal imaging captured at dawn. For vehicles, minimum 12 personnel. Moving with discipline. It wasn't unusual for cartel operations to cross this region. The isolated terrain made it ideal for trafficking. What concerned Blackwood was the precision evident in their movement patterns. These weren't typical mules. "Wake Ramon and Deacon," he said. "I want eyes on this before midday." The compound housed 7 former operatives, all members of Special Operations Detachment Delta, a unit whose existence had been officially denied. Their final mission in Kandahar had gone catastrophically wrong, not through any fault of their own, but through political maneuvering that had left them exposed. 3 team members had died. The official report blamed operational errors, disgracing their sacrifice. Rather than fight an unwinnable battle against the military bureaucracy, Blackwood had made a decision. The surviving team members would disappear. With skills honed through decades of black operations, creating new identities had been simple. Pooling resources acquired during their service, both official and unofficial, they'd established this sanctuary in one of America's most remote regions. On paper, they were a private security consulting firm. In reality, they were ghosts, living comfortably off the grid. Most had family who knew they were alive, ex-wives, adult children, but accepted the necessary distance. The compound was self-sufficient with solar power, well water, and enough supplies to last months. Blackwood entered the underground command center, a reinforced bunker that had cost nearly $1 million to construct. The temperature dropped 15 degrees as he descended the stairs. Marcus looked up from the satellite feed, his features illuminated by the screens. "They're moving methodically," Marcus observed. "Grid search pattern. Looking for something. Or someone," Blackwood added. Marcus Chun had been the team's communications specialist, capable of intercepting any transmission, cracking most encryption. After discharge, he'd expanded his skills into the digital realm, becoming their eyes in systems they shouldn't legally access. "I ran facial recognition on the thermal images," Marcus said. "Got a partial on one of them." He pulled up a file. "Alejandro Vega, former Mexican Special Forces, now runs tactical operations for the Salazar Cartel." Blackwood studied the image. "The Salazars don't operate this far north. This has been Zeta territory for years. Territorial expansion? Or something specific?" The door opened as Ramon Diaz entered, still pulling a t-shirt over his muscled torso. Despite being in his late 40s, the former weapons specialist maintained the physique of a man 10 years younger. "What's so important I'm missing breakfast?" he asked, but his easy smile faded as he saw the imagery. Ramon had grown up in El Paso, had family on both sides of the border. He understood the cartels better than any of them. "That's definitely Salazar's group," he confirmed, studying the tactical formation. "See how they maintain distance while still covering each other? That's Vega's signature. He trains his men like a military unit. Question is, what are they doing here?" Blackwood mused. "Nothing good," Ramon replied. "Vega doesn't handle routine operations. If he's leading personally, it's high priority." Deacon Walker appeared in the doorway, silent as always. The team's sniper had spoken less with each passing year, but his eyes missed nothing. At 47, his hands remained surgeon steady, capable of placing a round with precision at distances that seemed impossible. "Show him," Blackwood ordered. Marcus replayed the thermal footage. Deacon watched him passively, then made a small gesture with 2 fingers, their old signal for reconnaissance required. "Agreed," Blackwood said. "You and Ramon take the eastern approach. Stay dark unless absolutely necessary. Observation only." Both men nodded and departed without discussion. Years of operations together had made words largely unnecessary. "Think they know about us?" Marcus asked when they were alone. "Unlikely. We've been careful." Blackwood studied the map. "But something's brought Vega's elite team here, and I want to know what before they get any closer." The truth was, their presence wasn't entirely unknown. Local ranchers and the scattered residents of nearby communities were aware of the security consultants who kept to themselves in the mountains. Some probably suspected their military background. None knew the full truth that under Blackwood's command, the team had conducted operations in 27 countries, many of which would never be acknowledged. Their last mission should have been simple: extract an asset with critical intelligence about terrorist financing networks. Instead, they'd walked into an ambush. Evidence later suggested someone in command had deliberately provided outdated intelligence. 3 good men had died, so someone's political agenda could advance. The asset, a banker with records proving certain American officials were involved in the same financing networks, had never been mentioned in the official report. Blackwood pushed the memories aside. The past couldn't be changed. The present demanded attention. Elena's voice came through the intercom. "James, you better come up. There's someone at the gate." Visitors were rare enough to be concerning. Blackwood took the stairs 2 at a time, retrieving his sidearm from the lockbox near the entrance. Elena was already at the security monitor, which showed a dusty pickup truck idling before the reinforced gate half a mile from the main compound. "It's Sheriff Mendez," she said, recognizing the county sheriff's vehicle. Blackwood relaxed slightly. Mike Mendez was one of the few local officials they maintained contact with, a former Marine who asked few questions and appreciated having former Special Forces operators in his jurisdiction, especially as cartel activity increased. "Let him through the outer gate. Hold at the checkpoint," Blackwood instructed. The compound's security worked in layers. The outer perimeter appeared to be simple ranch fencing, but contained pressure sensors and motion detectors. The inner compound was protected by more substantial measures. Blackwood drove the quarter mile to the checkpoint in a weathered Jeep. Sheriff Mendez waited beside his vehicle, shielding his eyes from the intensifying sun. "Mike," Blackwood greeted him with a nod. "Little early for a social call." "Not social, James." The sheriff's expression was grim beneath his mustache. "About something you should know about. Mind if we talk inside? It's already hot as hell out here." Blackwood considered for a moment, then gestured to the Jeep. Mendez was one of the few outsiders allowed into the compound, though his access was limited to the main house's front rooms. As they drove, Mendez gazed at the surrounding landscape. "You boys picked a good spot. Defensible. Just looking for privacy," Blackwood replied with the practiced ease of a cover story told many times. "Sure." Mendez nodded, not pushing further. Once inside the cooler interior of the main house, he accepted a glass of water from Elena before continuing. Had a situation yesterday. Border Patrol found 3 bodies in the desert, about 30 miles southeast of here. Professional hits, military precision. Blackwood's expression remained neutral. Cartel business. That's what's strange. These weren't rival gangbangers. All 3 were known Zeta enforcers. Mendez leaned forward. Someone's moving on established territory, and they're not playing by the usual rules. These weren't messy killings, single shots, long distance. One was taken out through a vehicle window from what we estimate was over 800 yards. Deacon's range, Blackwood thought, but didn't say. Why tell us? He asked instead. Mendez gave a knowing look. Because whatever's coming might spill this way, and because I've got exactly 4 deputies to cover 3,000 square miles. And because I'm not stupid, James. I don't know exactly what you and your friends did before settling here, but I know enough. We're just consultants, Mike. Sure you are. Mendez finished his water. Just thought you should have a heads up. Border patrols stretch thin, and they're tracking increased movement through these mountains. Not the usual traffickers either, better equipped, moving in tactical formations. We've noticed, Blackwood admitted. Spotted a group this morning, heading toward Pico Blanco. Mendez nodded. There's rumors about a large shipment coming through. Something valuable enough to send their best people. Drugs, weapons, maybe both. After the sheriff departed, Blackwood called the team together in the command center. Besides himself, Elena, Marcus, Ramon, and Deacon, there were 2 others, Jackson Cooper, their former demolitions expert who now maintained the compound's infrastructure, and Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who had served as the team's field surgeon. We may have a situation developing, Blackwood began, relaying the sheriff's information and the morning's observations. Ramon and Deacon are getting eyes on the group near Pico Blanco, but we need to prepare for the possibility that their operation, whatever it is, could affect us. You think they know about us? Sarah asked. At 14, she was the oldest after Blackwood, her auburn hair now streaked with gray, her hands still possessing the steadiness that had saved countless lives in field hospitals across the globe. Unlikely, but possible, Blackwood replied. More likely they're establishing a new trafficking route, and this territory is strategic. Either way, having Salazar's elite team this close is concerning. So what's the play? Jackson asked, the former Navy SEAL's Alabama drawl unchanged by decades away from home. We monitoring or engaging? Monitoring for now, Blackwood said firmly. We've stayed under the radar this long by not inviting trouble. Let's see what Ramon and Deacon find before deciding next steps. Elena's tablet beeped with an incoming transmission. Speaking of, she said, opening the secure channel. Report coming in. Ramon's voice came through clearly despite the distance. We have eyes on the target. 12 men, heavily armed. Definitely Vega's team. I recognize his second-in-command, Torres, from intelligence files. They've established a forward operating base in the abandoned mining complex at Pico Blanco. What are they doing? Blackwood asked. Unloading equipment. Looks like they're settling in, not just passing through. They've set up a perimeter communications array. A pause. This isn't a trafficking operation, Colonel. They're preparing for something more substantial. Surveillance? Affirmative. They've placed spotters on high ground. Good ones, too. Deacon almost walked into one. Had to take a 3-meal detour to remain undetected. Blackwood considered this information. Stand position and continue observation. I want to know their patterns, rotations, communication schedule. Don't take unnecessary risks. Understood. We'll call again at 1,800 unless something changes. The transmission ended. What do you think? Elena asked. Blackwood studied the map. If they're established at Pico Blanco, they have sight lines across the southern approach to our position. 15 miles is well outside effective strike range, but close enough for surveillance. Of us specifically? Marcus questioned. Maybe, maybe not. But we need to operate under the assumption that our security could be compromised. Blackwood made a decision. Jackson, initiate Security Protocol 3. I want all non-essential systems powered down, communications at minimum, and contingency preparations underway. Jackson nodded. Protocol 3 was their prepare and for and wanted U.S. procedure, not full battle stations, but readying the compound for potential hostile attention. I should check our medical supplies, Sarah said. If there's any possibility of casualties. Do it, Blackwood agreed. Everyone check your gear. If Vega's people are getting comfortable in our backyard, we need to be ready for any scenario. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Blackwood returned to the surveillance screens. The desert stretched endlessly under the harsh sun, deceptively empty. He'd chosen this location for its isolation, believing it would keep them safe from the world they'd left behind. Now he wondered if they'd simply traded one battlefield for another. Whatever Vega and his elite squad were planning, it had brought them to the wrong territory. If they became a threat, they would discover too late that this seemingly empty land was home to operatives whose very existence had been erased from official records, a forgotten Black Ops team that had never lost the edge that made them legendary. Dusk settled over the mountains as Ramon and Deacon established their observation post in a natural depression half a mile from the cartel's position at Pico Blanco. They'd moved with practiced stealth, leaving no trail, carrying only essential equipment. Both men wore desert camouflage that blended perfectly with the surrounding terrain, their faces darkened with tactical paint despite the heat. Through his high-powered spotting scope, Ramon studied the cartel's operation. The abandoned mining complex had become a fortified position in just hours, communications equipment installed, guard rotations established, supply lines secured. This wasn't improvised. It had been meticulously planned. They've got military-grade thermal imaging, Ramon whispered, noting the equipment being calibrated on a rocky outcropping. Israeli manufacture, latest generation. Not something you pick up at a border pawn shop. Deacon nodded almost imperceptibly, his own attention fixed through his rifle scope on a man giving orders, Alejandro Vega, the cartel's elite squad commander. Through the scope, Deacon could see the subtle indicators of professional training in Vega's movements, the way he constantly scanned his surroundings, how he positioned himself with cover always available. The practiced economy of his gestures when directing his men. Ramon documented everything with a specialized camera that transmitted encrypted images back to the compound. Counting 16 personnel now, not 12, he updated. 4 more arrived in a blacked-out SUV 20 minutes ago, bringing in crates, weapons, not drugs. Deacon tapped Ramon's shoulder and pointed to a separate area where 2 men were setting up what appeared to be survey equipment. You're right, Ramon agreed, adjusting his scope. They're mapping something. Terrain analysis. He captured several images of the activity, then frowned. The direction they're focusing, it's toward our valley. This confirmation of their worst suspicions didn't change either man's expression. Both had learned long ago that emotion was a luxury afforded only in safe environments. Here, exposed on the mountainside with cartel killers half a mile away, discipline was survival. As darkness fell completely, night vision equipment revealed the cartel operation becoming even more active. Vehicles arrived and departed with precise timing. Guards patrolled in overlapping patterns that left no blind spots. This isn't normal cartel behavior, Ramon observed. They're operating like a military unit. Deacon made a small gesture with 2 fingers, their team's shorthand for specific target. Agreed, Ramon nodded. They're not establishing a trafficking route. They're preparing for something specific. Back at the compound, Blackwood studied the transmitted images with growing concern. Marcus Chin enhanced each feed, extracting maximum detail from the surveillance. Those survey readings they're taking, Marcus said, highlighting a section of the image. If I extrapolate the coordinates based on the equipment positioning. He plotted a line across the digital map, which extended directly toward their compound. Their mapping approaches to our location. Elena leaned forward. You're sure? Mathematics doesn't lie, Marcus replied. The angle, elevation measurements, They're creating a tactical approach to this exact valley. Blackwood's expression remained impassive, but his mind accelerated through implications and contingencies. The question is whether they know exactly who we are, or if this location is significant for another reason. Could be the natural resources, Jackson suggested. This valley has one of the few reliable water sources in the region, strategically valuable regardless of current occupants. Or they could be after us specifically, Elena countered. If someone connected enough dots about former Delta operators disappearing after Kandahar. Let's not assume the worst without evidence, Blackwood interrupted. We need more information. He activated the secure communication channel. Talon, this is home base. Status report. Ramon's voice came through, deliberately measured and quiet. Home base, we're maintaining position. Target has established full perimeter security and continues equipment setup. They've deployed what appears to be signal intelligence gear, direction-finding antennas, communications interceptors. Any indication they've detected you? Negative. We're well outside their current sweep range. But they're being unusually thorough for a cartel operation. Understood. Maintain observation through the night. Report any significant changes immediately. After ending the transmission, Blackwood turned to Marcus. I want complete signals blackout except for emergency communications. If they're scanning for electronic signatures, let's not make it easy for them. Already on it, Marcus confirmed. I've routed all essential systems through the Faraday-shielded servers and dispersed decoy emissions half a mile from our actual location. Sarah, Jackson, I want full inventory of defensive supplies and medical provisions. If we need to shelter in place, I want to know our sustainability timeline. Both nodded and departed to their tasks without question. The team's immediate response to potential threats had been drilled to instinct through years of operations together. No panic, no unnecessary discussion, just immediate execution of established protocols. Elena remained with Blackwood and Marcus in the command center, studying the geographic data. If they're targeting us specifically, the question becomes who sent them and why now? We've been here 5 years without incident. Not necessarily targeting us, Blackwood cautioned. This territory has strategic value regardless of our presence. Natural elevation for communications relay, water source, multiple escape routes into protected federal land. Still, Elena persisted, Vega's team isn't sent for routine operations. The Salazars reserve them for high-value targets or significant territorial acquisitions. The secure communications channel activated with an incoming transmission. Home base, this is Talon. Priority update. Blackwood immediately responded. Go ahead, Talon. New arrivals, 2 vehicles, black Suburbans with diplomatic plates. One passenger appears to be German or Eastern European, based on overheard conversation. Well-dressed, being treated with significant deference by Vega. They're reviewing maps together inside the main structure. Can you get visual confirmation of the new arrival? Negative. They're keeping him inside, away from sight lines. But they've doubled the perimeter guards since his arrival. Blackwood absorbed this information. Maintain position, but priority is remaining undetected. If risk of discovery becomes significant, withdraw immediately. After signing off, he turned to Elena and Marcus. Diplomatic plates means government connection. Mexican intelligence, possibly, or DEA undercover. Or less savory elements, Elena suggested. Certain foreign intelligence services have maintained cartel relationships for decades. Marcus had already begun searching international databases they weren't technically supposed to access. If we had visual confirmation, I could run facial recognition. Without it, keep monitoring all communications in the area, Blackwood ordered. If they're running a significant operation, there will be support elements, supply chains, extraction protocols. Find the patterns. Throughout the night, Ramon and Deacon maintained their surveillance in rotating watches. The cartel operation continued unabated, with precise shift changes and equipment installations that spoke of extensive planning and resources. Shortly before dawn, Ramon observed a concerning development. "They're deploying reconnaissance teams," he reported back to the compound. 4 two-man units, moving out in different directions. One heading directly toward the valley approach. "Distance and estimated arrival?" Blackwood asked. "Based on current pace and terrain, they'll reach the outer perimeter sensors by midday unless they change course." Blackwood considered their options. Return to base. Use the eastern extraction route we established. If they have recon teams deploying, remaining in position poses unnecessary risk. Copy that. Extracting now. Blackwood turned to the team gathered in the command center. "We have approximately 6 hours before potential contact with cartel reconnaissance elements. We need to determine whether they're searching specifically for us or conducting general area reconnaissance. Either way," Jackson pointed out, "we have unwanted visitors approaching our doorstep." Agreed. Initiate Protocol 4. Protocol 4 represented elevated security status, all non-essential systems powered down, defensive positions prepared, escape vehicles fueled and ready, emergency exfiltration routes confirmed. It was a status they had drilled dozens of times but never actually implemented. Sarah Mitchell, who had been monitoring the medical preparations, joined them. "All medical supplies are prepped and distributed to emergency caches. 3 months' supply divided among 4 locations as per contingency planning." Blackwood nodded approval. "The question becomes whether we stay invisible or make our presence known on our terms. If they're just mapping territory, revealing ourselves only creates unnecessary complications," Elena argued. "And if they're hunting us specifically," Marcus countered, "letting their recon teams report back gives away our defensive positioning." "We gather more information before deciding," Blackwood determined. "I want our perimeter sensors recalibrated to maximum sensitivity. If their teams approach, I want to know exactly where they are and what equipment they're carrying before making any moves." By mid-morning, Ramon and Deacon had returned to the compound, having taken an extended route to ensure they weren't followed. Both men looked exhausted but remained alert, their professionalism overriding physical discomfort. "Vega runs a tight operation," Ramon reported, accepting a bottle of water from Elena. "His men move with tactical discipline I haven't seen since our active duty days. Overlapping fields of fire, counter-surveillance protocols, encrypted communications." "The European?" Blackwood asked. "Never got visual confirmation, but overheard fragments suggest a major operation being planned. Something about extraction and high-value asset recovery." Ramon wiped dust from his face. "They mentioned a timeline, 72 hours until primary phase initiation." "Asset recovery could mean many things," Elena noted. "Rescue operation, property retrieval, personnel extraction. Or they could be using standard terminology to disguise actual intentions," Blackwood said. "Cartel operations have increasingly adopted military jargon to confuse intelligence monitoring." Marcus called their attention to the surveillance monitors. "Perimeter alert, western approach. Single individual approaching the outer sensor line." The team gathered around the screen, watching as thermal imaging revealed a figure moving with deliberate stealth through the scrub terrain. The individual paused periodically, using what appeared to be optical equipment to survey ahead. "Cartel scout," Ramon confirmed, studying the movement pattern. "Professional. Note how he uses terrain features for concealment. Not a typical trafficker." "Options?" Blackwood asked the room. "We could let him observe, feed false information," Elena suggested. "Make the compound appear as exactly what our cover suggests, a private security consulting firm's remote training facility. Or we intercept quietly," Jackson offered. "Extract information before they realize their scout is missing." Deacon, who had remained silent since returning, made a subtle hand gesture. Their team signed for capturing an enemy combatant for intelligence purposes. "Agreed," Blackwood nodded. Ramon, Deacon, intercept and extract. Non-lethal approach unless absolutely necessary. We need information more than we need bodies. Both men departed immediately, retrieving specialized equipment from their tactical lockers. Within 15 minutes, they had exited through concealed access points that wouldn't be visible to the approaching scout. The team watched through networked body cameras as Ramon and Deacon moved through familiar terrain with silent efficiency. They split to approach the scout from different angles, using the gullies and rock formations for concealment. The cartel scout was good, professional training evident in his methodical approach and constant awareness of his surroundings. But he was in terrain that Ramon and Deacon had memorized over 5 years against operators with decades of the world's most advanced tactical training. The interception, when it came, was seamlessly executed. Ramon created a minor distraction, a small rock deliberately dislodged, drawing the scout's attention momentarily eastward. In that split second, Deacon approached from behind, applying a precision choke hold that rendered the man unconscious within seconds, without allowing him to trigger any communication device. Within 20 minutes, the scout had been transported to the compound's secure holding area, a reinforced room originally designed as an emergency shelter. When he regained consciousness, he found himself secured to a metal chair, facing Blackwood and Elena. Buenos dias, Blackwood greeted him calmly in fluent Spanish. I apologize for the accommodation, but you were trespassing on private property. The man, mid-30s, athletic build, with the hardened expression of someone accustomed to violence, assessed his situation without panic. His eyes cataloged the room's features, Blackwood's positioning, potential exits. Professional behavior. Who do you work for? Blackwood continued in Spanish. The man remained silent, his expression revealing nothing. We found these. Elena placed several items on a metal table. Advanced communications equipment, a high-resolution camera, a satellite phone, and a handgun with the serial number professionally removed. Military grade. Not typical equipment for someone who's just passing through. The man's eyes flickered briefly to the equipment, then back to Blackwood's face, still saying nothing. Here's our situation, Blackwood continued conversationally. You're part of Alejandro Vega's team, currently establishing an operation at Pico Blanco. You were sent to scout this location for reasons we'd like to understand. We have 2 options. You can provide that information voluntarily, or we can extract it using methods that neither of us would enjoy. For the first time, the man spoke, his accent confirming Mexican military training. You are making a mistake. You have no idea who you're interfering with. Actually, we have a fairly good idea, Blackwood replied. Salazar Cartel, elite tactical division, operating outside their traditional territory under Vega's direct command. What we don't know is why you're specifically interested in this valley. A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face. Clearly, he hadn't expected this level of specific intelligence. Who are you people? He asked. Concerned property owners, Blackwood replied easily. Now, let's try again. What is Vega planning that involves this location? The man considered his options, professional calculation evident in his expression. Finally, he made a decision. I don't know the full operation. Compartmentalized information. I was sent to confirm whether the reported installation in this valley actually exists and what level of security it maintains. Reported by whom? That information wasn't shared with me. I received coordinates, reconnaissance parameters, reporting protocols. Elena leaned forward. What's your extraction protocol? When are you expected to report back? 6 hours from insertion. If I don't make contact, they send another team, more heavily armed. Blackwood and Elena exchanged glances. The timeline matched what they'd expected. The European visitor at your camp, Blackwood continued. Who is he? This question visibly unsettled the scout. I don't know his name. He arrived yesterday with Vega. They call him the client. And what does this client want? The scout hesitated before answering. There's something in this region he's willing to pay the Salazars a significant amount to acquire. Something valuable enough that Vega brought his entire tactical team rather than regular cartel soldiers. Something or someone? Elena pressed. I don't know. The briefing only said, high-value asset recovery. Blackwood studied the man carefully, assessing the truth of his statements. Years of interrogation experience told him the scout was likely being honest about his limited knowledge. Compartmentalization was standard procedure in professional operations. Final question, Blackwood said. Is your operation specifically targeting this compound, or is the compound incidental to your actual objective? The scout's expression shifted slightly. The compound is the target, or rather, someone believed to be inside it. This confirmation sent a chill through the room. Elena maintained her professional composure, but Blackwood could sense her tension. Who exactly are you looking for? She asked. I wasn't given a name. Only that the individual is former American military, with access to information the client wants recovered at any cost. After completing the interrogation, Blackwood gathered the team in the command center, the scout secured in the holding area under Jackson's watch. It appears we're the target, or more specifically, one of us is, Blackwood summarized. The question is which one, and what information they believe we possess. Could be related to Kandahar, Marcus suggested. Someone's learned what really happened and wants the evidence we secured. Or something else entirely, Elena countered. Between us, we've participated in dozens of classified operations. Any number of them could have loose and someone wants tied up. What's our move? Ramon asked the question they were all considering. Blackwood studied the tactical display showing the cartel's position at Pico Blanco and their own compound. We have confirmation they're coming for us, not passing through. That changes the equation. We can't simply hide and hope they lose interest. We could disappear, Sarah suggested. We have contingency identities, emergency funds. Start over somewhere else. And keep running every time someone comes looking? Ramon shook his head. That's not living, that's existing. We left that life behind. Besides, Marcus added, if they found us here after 5 years of careful concealment, they could find us again. Better to deal with the threat now, on terrain we know, with resources in place. Deacon made a subtle gesture, their signal for taking offensive action rather than maintaining defensive posture. Agreed, Blackwood nodded. We've spent 5 years preparing this location for exactly this scenario. We have the tactical advantage of home territory, pre-positioned supplies, and they don't know exactly what they're facing. He turned to Marcus. What's our current surveillance assessment of their position? Satellite imagery shows 22 personnel at Pico Blanco now. Significant weapons cache being installed. They've established a functional forward operating base with defensive perimeter. Reconnaissance teams have been dispatched in multiple directions, but the primary focus appears to be our valley. They know something's here, but not exactly what, Blackwood concluded. That gives us an advantage. Elena's tablet beeped with an incoming alert. Perimeter sensors just picked up 2 more approaching signatures. Eastern Ridge, moving tactically, approximately 3 miles out. Established timeframe matches, Ramon noted. They're missing their scouts check-in, so they've dispatched the follow-up team he mentioned. How do we play this? Jackson asked, returning from the holding area. Let them come close enough to capture? Redirect them? Eliminate the threat. Blackwood surveyed his team, each member awaiting his decision with the patient readiness that came from years of high-stakes operations together. Their position was precarious, cartel forces closing in, their sanctuary compromised, and still uncertain which of them was the specific target. We proceed with adaptive response, he determined. No lethal force unless absolutely necessary. Our priority is intelligence gathering while maintaining our tactical advantage. He turned to Elena and Marcus. I want complete monitoring of all approaching teams. Track their communications if possible. Already on it, Marcus confirmed, fingers dancing across his keyboard. They're using encrypted channels, but they're following standard cartel protocols. I should be able to penetrate within the hour. Ramon, Deacon, prepare for counter-reconnaissance. I want eyes on the approaching team without them knowing they're being watched. Jackson, secure our perimeter with non-lethal deterrence at the standard intervals. Each team member moved to their assigned task with practiced efficiency. Sarah remained with Blackwood in the command center. "And our guest?" she asked, referring to the captured scout. "Keep him secured but comfortable. He may have more value as a source of information." Blackwood turned his attention to the tactical display. 5 years of preparation had transformed the seemingly ordinary compound into a defensible position with multiple redundancies. Hidden caches of supplies, pre-positioned equipment, concealed observation posts, and escape routes had all been established with meticulous attention to detail. The cartel might have superior numbers, but the team held every other advantage. "We need to determine exactly who they're after and why," Blackwood told Sarah. "Until we know that, we're fighting blind." "Could be any of us," she acknowledged. "We've all participated in operations that created powerful enemies." Kandahar remained the most likely connection, their final mission together that had ended in betrayal and the official deaths of several team members. The intelligence they gathered about certain American officials involved in terrorist financing had never been released, stored instead as insurance against future threats. If someone had traced them here, it likely connected to those sealed files. Through the compound surveillance system, Blackwood observed Jackson moving methodically along the perimeter, setting up what appeared to be simple wildlife cameras, but were actually sophisticated motion sensors connected to non-lethal defensive measures, directed sound devices, targeted light arrays, and carefully concealed terrain obstacles. In an emergency, more lethal options were available, but Blackwood preferred to avoid bloodshed unless absolutely necessary. Dead cartel soldiers brought investigations, attention they couldn't afford. "Colonel," Marcus called from his station. "I've got something." Intercepted partial transmission from Pico Blanco to an unknown receiver. "They're discussing extraction parameters for someone called the primary asset." "Any indication who that might be?" "Negative, but they mentioned specialized transport requirements. Medical support standing by." "Medical?" Blackwood frowned. "Are they expecting their target to be injured? Or the target already has medical requirements?" Sarah suggested. "An existing condition." This new information didn't align with any of their profiles. All team members were in excellent physical condition, none requiring specialized medical attention. "Continue monitoring," Blackwood ordered. "We need more clarity." Ramon's voice came through the secure channel. "Approaching team has split into 3 elements, spreading out to create a search perimeter. Professional movement, covering all approach vectors. These aren't standard cartel soldiers. They're moving with tactical discipline. Maintain observation distance. Do not engage." Outside, the desert heat had intensified as midday approached, shimmering waves rising from the baked earth. Through high-powered optics, Ramon tracked the cartel team's methodical approach, noting their equipment and formation patterns. Their professionalism was concerning. These weren't typical cartel foot soldiers, but specially trained operatives using military protocols. "They've established a search grid," he reported back, "moving systematically through sectors. They'll reach our first sensor line within 40 minutes at current pace." In the command center, Blackwood assessed their options. "Jackson, status on perimeter preparations? Non-lethal defenses active on all approaches. First line will disorient and confuse. Second will force retreat without casualties if properly triggered." "Good. Elena, what's our satellite situation?" "Intermittent coverage for the next 3 hours. Then we'll have continuous monitoring from the European weather satellite we accessed." Blackwood made his decision. "We'll allow the approaching team to trigger our first-line defenses. Their response will provide valuable intelligence about their capabilities and protocols. Marcus, ensure all data is captured, communications, movement patterns, equipment signatures." "Copy that." As the team waited, tension hung in the air despite their outward composure. This was the first direct threat to their sanctuary since establishing it 5 years ago. The careful life they'd built, removed from the shadows of their former existence, now hung in the balance. Through body cameras worn by Ramon and Deacon, positioned at separate observation points. They watched as the cartel team continued their approach. Their movement was disciplined, maintaining proper intervals, using terrain features for concealment, all indicators of professional training. 30 meters to first sensor line, Marcus counted down. 20 meters, 10. The lead cartel operative crossed the invisible boundary, triggering the first layer of defensive measures. Immediately, high-frequency directional sound emitters activated, targeting only the specific area of intrusion with debilitating audio that caused disorientation without permanent damage. The effect was immediate. The cartel team dropped to defensive postures, several clutching their heads in pain. Their formation scattered as they sought cover from the invisible attack. Communications spike, Marcus reported, monitoring their channels. They're reporting contact with unknown defensive measures. Requesting guidance from base. Blackwood watched with clinical detachment as the cartel team regrouped, now moving with heightened caution. Rather than retreating, they adjusted their approach, using equipment to scan for additional defensive mechanisms. They're well prepared, Elena observed. That's counter-surveillance equipment they're deploying. Military grade. Through their observation, they watched as the cartel team mapped the invisible defensive perimeter, marking its boundaries and searching for weaknesses. They maintained discipline despite the setback, communicating in short, encrypted bursts to their base at Pico Blanco. They're pulling back, Ramon reported after 30 minutes of observation. Establishing position just beyond our sensor range. Looks like they're setting up surveillance equipment of their own. They're settling in for proper reconnaissance, Blackwood concluded. They expected defenses, which means they knew this wasn't an ordinary location. The tactical situation had evolved into a complex game of counter-surveillance, each side assessing the other's capabilities while revealing as little as possible about their own. For now, the cartel teams remained outside their defensive perimeter, but their presence signaled a concerning escalation. As afternoon stretched into evening, the team gathered in the command center to assess their situation. Marcus had made progress decrypting the cartel's communications, revealing fragments of their operational parameters. They've established a 3-day timeline for their primary mission, he reported. First day for reconnaissance and surveillance. Second for infiltration preparation. Third for the actual extraction operation. Any clarification on the target? Blackwood asked. Nothing specific, but I intercepted a transmission referring to the doctor as their primary objective. All eyes turned to Sarah Mitchell, the team's medical specialist. Me? She asked, momentarily losing her typical composure. That makes no sense. Why would the Salazar cartel be interested in me specifically? Your work in field trauma medicine, Blackwood suggested. Your techniques for treating catastrophic injuries under combat conditions have saved countless lives. But that information is widely available in medical journals, she countered. I published my findings after leaving active service. Perhaps it's not your medical knowledge they're after, but something you witnessed or were involved with, Elena proposed. Something from before your time with our unit. Sarah fell silent, her expression troubled as she mentally reviewed her extensive operational history. There is one possibility, she finally said. Before joining this team, I was attached to a classified operation in Juarez. Officially a training mission for Mexican Federal Police medical units, but actually gathering intelligence on cartel medical facilities. We identified several doctors working directly for cartels, developing specialized treatments for high-value members. Some were experimenting with cutting-edge techniques not approved for normal medical practice. What kind of techniques? Jackson asked. Experimental stem cell treatments, specialized trauma protocols, even some genetic modification therapies. Borderline ethical procedures that couldn't get approval in legitimate medical channels. And the Salazars were involved. Not directly. This was primarily Zeta territory at that time. But I documented everything, created detailed files on the physicians involved, their methodologies, research data. Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced with implications. Where are these files now? surrendered to military intelligence upon mission completion, classified at the highest levels. She paused. Or so I thought. I kept personal notes, research journals, professional habit. They're in my secure storage here. Could these research materials be valuable enough to justify this level of operation? Sarah considered the question seriously. Some of the procedures they were developing were decades ahead of conventional medicine, particularly in the areas of rapid trauma response and cellular regeneration. In the right hands, that research could be worth billions to pharmaceutical companies. In the wrong hands, it could give a cartel significant advantage in treating their wounded, extending the lives of key leadership, even developing enhanced combat capabilities for their soldiers. Elena finished the thought. Marcus, search for any intelligence about health issues among Salazar cartel leadership, Blackwood directed. Marcus immediately accessed his databases, cross-referencing information across multiple intelligence sources. Manuel Salazar, current head of the organization, was reported to have been seriously wounded in an assassination attempt 8 months ago. Details are classified, but rumors suggested catastrophic injuries that would typically be fatal. Yet he survived, Blackwood noted. Not just survived, according to latest intelligence, he's made a full recovery. Financial traces show the cartel made significant payments to medical facilities in Germany and Switzerland during this period. The European visitor at Pico Blanco, Elena connected the dots. German or Eastern European, according to Ramon's observation. A medical specialist, Blackwood concluded, brought in to assess whether Sarah's research could benefit their recovery programs. Sarah's expression hardened. My work was meant to save lives on the battlefield, not extend the lifespan of cartel murderers. That appears to be exactly why they want you. Or more specifically, your research, Blackwood stated. The question becomes whether they want just the information or you as well to implement the procedures. The implications hung heavy in the room. If the cartel sought only Sarah's research, theft was their likely approach. If they wanted Sarah herself, kidnapping became the probable scenario, a considerably more dangerous situation. Either way, we now know their primary target, Blackwood said. That gives us an advantage in planning our response. A sudden alert from the surveillance system interrupted their discussion. On the monitor, thermal imaging showed a new development at the cartel's observation post beyond their perimeter. They're moving again, Ramon reported from his position. Multiple teams, converging on the eastern approach. More heavily armed than the previous group. They're accelerating their timeline, Blackwood realized. The initial reconnaissance must have provided them enough information to proceed more aggressively. The team moved with practiced efficiency, each member retrieving their tactical gear without being told. Years of operations together had created an almost telepathic coordination. They knew what needed to be done without extensive discussion. Jackson, activate secondary defensive measures on the eastern perimeter. Ramon, Deacon, fall back to defensive positions Alpha and Charlie. Elena, secure all sensitive materials in the vault, priority on Sarah's research files. Marcus, continue monitoring their communications, but prepare the system for emergency protocols if we need to go dark. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Blackwood turned to Sarah. You should prepare for potential evacuation. Essential materials only. I'm not running, she replied firmly. This is my home too. And if I'm their target, separating from the team only makes their job easier. Your research is what they want. If necessary, we can use that as leverage. All the more reason I should remain with the team. No one else can authenticate or properly interpret those materials. Blackwood didn't waste time arguing. Sarah's determination was a known quantity, and her reasoning was sound. Stay with Elena during the initial response phase. If the situation deteriorates, you move to the secure room without argument. Understood, Colonel. Outside, the desert night had fallen, stars brilliantly clear in the black sky. Through night vision equipment, Ramon tracked the cartel team's approach, noting their use of terrain features and disciplined movement patterns. "They're proceeding more cautiously after encountering our first defensive line," he reported, scanning for additional measures, maintaining tactical spacing. "Let them approach the secondary line," Blackwood directed. "We need to assess their equipment and capabilities." The secondary defensive line, positioned half a mile closer to the compound, contained more sophisticated countermeasures, targeted electromagnetic pulse devices that could disable electronic equipment without harming personnel, specialized terrain features designed to channel movement into predetermined areas, and advanced surveillance systems that could identify specific weapons and equipment. Through the command center monitors, they watched the cartel team's methodical approach. These men moved with the confidence of experienced operators, using hand signals rather than electronic communications, maintaining disciplined intervals, scanning constantly for threats. "These aren't ordinary cartel soldiers," Elena observed. "They've had specialized training." "Vega recruits from Mexican Special Forces," Ramon confirmed. "Many from the same units he served in before joining the Salazars." When the cartel team crossed the second sensor line, Jackson activated the defensive measures. Precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses disabled their night vision equipment, communications devices, and weapons electronics. Simultaneously, hidden terrain features, channels dug into the desert floor and concealed by natural-appearing covers, funneled their movement into predetermined areas. The cartel team's response was professional but limited by their suddenly compromised equipment. They established defensive positions, using hand signals to coordinate their actions, clearly trained for such contingencies, but nevertheless disadvantaged. "They're calling for backup," Marcus reported, intercepting their emergency communications sent via analog radio, the only equipment still functioning, requesting heavy weapons support and additional personnel. "They're treating this as confirmation that their target is here," Blackwood observed, escalating accordingly. The tactical situation had shifted from reconnaissance to direct confrontation. Blackwood considered their options carefully. Open conflict with cartel forces would bring unwanted attention regardless of the outcome. Yet retreating meant abandoning the sanctuary they'd built, allowing the cartel to obtain Sarah's research and potentially leaving themselves vulnerable during evacuation. "Jackson, prepare the eastern defensive position for potential engagement. Non-lethal measures as primary response, lethal capability as backup only. Ramon, Deacon, maintain observation, but prepare to fall back to defensive positions if they breach the secondary perimeter." As the team moved to implement these orders, Blackwood's mind flashed back to a mission in northern Afghanistan 7 years earlier. Their unit had been trapped in a remote valley, outnumbered by Taliban forces, with extraction 12 hours away. They'd used the terrain and superior tactics to hold off a force 5 times their size, creating the illusion of greater numbers through carefully orchestrated defensive measures. The desert environment was different, but the principle remained the same: control the battlefield, dictate the terms of engagement, and never allow the enemy to accurately assess your true capabilities. "Marcus, what's the status of their main force at Pico Blanco?" "Satellite thermal imaging shows increased activity. Vehicles being prepared, personnel arming up. I estimate 30 minutes before reinforcements deploy toward our position." "That's our window," Blackwood decided. "Elena, implement Operation Phantasm." Operation Phantasm was one of several contingency plans they developed and regularly drilled. It utilized prepositioned equipment to create the illusion of a larger defensive force through strategically placed heat signatures, sound generators, and lighting effects that simulated movement of multiple personnel. "Sarah," Blackwood continued, "gather the most critical research materials, anything that would be particularly valuable to them. We'll use that as our primary bargaining chip if necessary." Within minutes, the compound transformed as Operation Phantasm activated. To any surveillance equipment, it would appear that additional personnel had arrived and taken defensive positions throughout the perimeter. Thermal signatures suggested a force of 20 or more defenders rather than the actual 7. Through their observation systems, they watched as the cartel team maintained position, clearly awaiting reinforcements before proceeding further. Their professional caution worked in the team's favor, buying precious time to complete defensive preparations. Reinforcements departing Pico Blanco, Marcus reported, monitoring satellite imagery. 3 vehicles, heavily armed personnel. Estimated arrival at current position in 22 minutes. Perfect, Blackwood nodded. That puts them exactly where we want them for the next phase. The cartel's logical approach, sending reconnaissance, establishing surveillance, then deploying reinforcements, was predictable to experienced operators like Blackwood's team. This predictability made their movements easier to counter, allowing the team to prepare specific responses for each phase of the cartel's operation. Ramon's voice came through the communication system. "Colonel, you need to see this." The team looked at the surveillance feed from Ramon's position. Through high-powered optics with thermal imaging, a new development was visible at the cartel's forward position. A figure in distinctive clothing had arrived, clearly not a cartel soldier, but someone in civilian attire, accompanied by personal security. "That's him," Ramon confirmed. "The European visitor from Pico Blanco. He's at their forward position now. Unusual for a non-combatant to approach this close to a potential engagement zone," Elena observed. "Unless he has personal interest in the outcome," Blackwood replied. "Marcus, can you get visual identification?" "Working on it." Marcus adjusted the surveillance systems, enhancing the image and running facial recognition algorithms against international databases. Image quality is insufficient for conclusive identification, but preliminary matches suggest similarities to Dr. Heinrich Müller, German national, specialist in experimental regenerative medicine. "Medical connection confirmed," Sarah said quietly. Müller was a leading researcher in stem cell therapies before his license was revoked for ethical violations 5 years ago. He disappeared from the European medical community shortly after, and apparently found new employers with fewer ethical concerns, Elena added. The presence of Müller at the forward position changed the tactical calculation. High-value non-combatants typically remained at safe distances unless their specific expertise was immediately required, suggesting the cartel was prepared to move directly to their extraction phase if the opportunity presented itself. "They're accelerating their timeline," Blackwood concluded. "The doctor's presence means they're prepared to verify and secure the research materials immediately upon retrieval." As the team processed this development, perimeter sensors detected the approaching reinforcements from Pico Blanco. 3 vehicles moving rapidly across the desert terrain, following the path established by the forward team. "Time to implement the next phase," Blackwood decided. "Marcus, activate the diversion protocols. Jackson, prepare for potential direct engagement at the eastern approach." Marcus initiated a programmed sequence that activated diversionary measures on the western perimeter, carefully timed explosions that appeared to be defensive fire, thermal signatures suggesting defensive positions, and directional sound projectors that simulated gunfire and tactical communications. The effect was immediate. Satellite imagery showed the cartel reinforcements suddenly splitting their approach, 2 vehicles continuing toward the original eastern position, one diverting toward the apparent western threat. "They've taken the bait," Elena confirmed, "dividing their forces exactly as planned." "Now let's see how professional they really are," Blackwood said. Professional forces typically maintain disciplined communication protocols even when plans changed unexpectedly. The team monitored the cartel's communications channels closely, gaining valuable intelligence about their procedures and command structure as they responded to the perceived Western threat. "They're maintaining tactical discipline," Marcus reported, monitoring their communications, adapting to the new information while continuing their primary approach. "Vega is personally commanding the eastern element, directing the western vehicle to establish position without direct engagement." As expected, Blackwood nodded. "They won't commit without better intelligence." The cartel's eastern element continued their approach toward the forward team's position, now clearly visible through the compound's surveillance systems. Two heavily armed vehicles, an estimated 12 personnel based on thermal signatures, moving with tactical precision across the desert terrain. When they reached the forward team's position, the cartel forces established a defensive perimeter, deploying personnel in disciplined formations that reflected their professional training. Dr. Muller remained protected in the center of their formation, clearly a high-value asset they were determined to secure. They're preparing for a direct approach to the compound, Ramon reported from his observation position. Setting up heavy weapons, establishing overlapping fields of fire. This isn't a reconnaissance operation anymore. They're preparing for assault. Blackwood watched their preparations with clinical detachment, analyzing their deployments and equipment. The cartel forces were well-equipped and disciplined, but they were operating on unfamiliar terrain against an enemy whose capabilities they could only guess at. That uncertainty was the team's greatest advantage. It's time we changed the dynamics of this engagement, he decided. Ramon, implement control measure Victor. Ramon acknowledged the order and retrieved a specialized piece of equipment from his tactical pack, a device that could intercept and override certain radio frequencies. Carefully calibrating it to the cartel's communication frequency, he activated the system. In the cartel's position, confusion erupted as their communications suddenly included a new voice, speaking in perfect Spanish with the correct authentication codes, but issuing contradictory orders. To the cartel forces, it would appear that their communications had been compromised, creating uncertainty about which commands were legitimate. Communications disruption successful, Marcus confirmed, monitoring their response. They're attempting to establish secondary channels, but I'm intercepting those as well. The cartel forces' disciplined formation showed signs of confusion as commanders attempted to verify orders through alternate means. The precise coordination that had characterized their approach began to fragment as uncertainty spread through their ranks. Now for Phase 2, Blackwood directed. Elena, execute Pattern Sierra. Elena activated another prepositioned system, specialized lighting arrays buried beneath the desert surface that suddenly illuminated particular areas of the terrain, briefly blinding night vision equipment and creating the impression of additional defensive measures activating. The combined effect of communications disruption and unexpected environmental changes created precisely the kind of uncertainty that could destabilize even professional forces. The cartel team's advance slowed as they reassessed the situation, clearly reluctant to proceed without reliable intelligence and communications. Through their surveillance systems, the team observed Dr. Muller engaged in heated discussion with Vega, gesturing emphatically toward the compound. Even without audio, the nature of their disagreement was clear. The doctor wanted to proceed immediately, while the tactical commander exercised professional caution. Classic conflict between operational priorities and tactical reality, Blackwood observed. The doctor wants his prize, but Vega knows the approach is compromised. Which gives us another opportunity, Elena suggested. If we can communicate directly with Vega, professional to professional, we might reach an understanding that serves both sides. Blackwood considered this approach. Military professionals, even those who had joined criminal organizations, often retained certain codes of conduct that civilians like Dr. Muller might not respect. There might be room for negotiation with Vega that wouldn't exist with the doctor or cartel leadership directly. Marcus, can you establish a direct communication channel to Vega's personal device? Already isolating the signature, Marcus confirmed. I can access it whenever you're ready. As they prepared this approach, Ramon reported a new development from his observation position. Movement at their western element. They've intercepted something, or someone. The surveillance feed from the western perimeter showed the cartel team had intercepted a civilian vehicle, an old pickup truck that had apparently wandered into the operational area by mistake. Thermal imaging revealed two occupants being removed from the vehicle at gunpoint. Local ranchers, Ramon identified, zooming in with his optics. The Morales brothers from the property 10 miles west. They sometimes use these backtrails for checking fence lines. Innocent civilians caught in the middle, Blackwood stated, his voice tight. This changes our calculation. The team watched as the cartel operatives secured the two men, clearly interrogating them about the compound and surrounding area. Even from a distance, the aggressive posture of the cartel soldiers indicated the civilians were in immediate danger. We can't allow civilian casualties, Elena said, articulating what they all knew. Regardless of our cover, Blackwood made an immediate decision. Jackson, prepare for direct intervention at the western position. Non-lethal approach if possible, but civilian safety is priority. Ramon, provide overwatch and tactical support. Copy that, Jackson acknowledged, already moving to retrieve his specialized equipment. As the team's former demolitions expert, he had developed a particular expertise in non-lethal neutralization techniques, flashbang devices modified for extended disorientation effects, targeted smoke deployment systems, and precision-guided rubber projectiles that could incapacitate without permanent injury. I'll coordinate from here, Blackwood continued. Marcus, maintain communications disruption on their primary channels, but monitor emergency frequencies. If they call for additional backup, we need to know immediately. As Jackson moved toward the western perimeter, utilizing concealed passages and terrain features that allowed rapid movement without exposure, Ramon shifted his position to provide better observation of the developing situation. Through their integrated tactical network, the team watched the cartel operatives growing increasingly aggressive with the civilian captives. One of the ranchers was forced to his knees, a weapon pressed to his head, clearly a persuasion technique rather than immediate execution, but the threat was unmistakable. 2 minutes to position, Jackson reported, his breathing controlled despite his rapid movement across the terrain. Ramon, status on target disposition? For Tangos, 2 civilians. Primary threat is the commander, positioned directly behind the kneeling civilian. 3 operators in supporting positions, creating a rough perimeter. Vehicle is southeastern quadrant, engine still running. Copy that. Priority is civilian extraction without casualties. Stand by for synchronized intervention. Blackwood's mind flashed back to a hostage situation in Yemen 8 years earlier. For civilians held by armed militants, his team tasked with extraction with minimal collateral damage. They developed specific protocols for such scenarios, drilled until the responses became instinctive. Execute in 3, 2, 1. From his concealed position, Jackson deployed the first countermeasure, a specialized disorientation device that combined intense light, sound, and atmospheric pressure changes calibrated to affect only a specific radius. Unlike standard flashbangs, these created a sustained effect that prevented targets from quickly recovering their situational awareness. The effect was immediate and precisely as designed. All 4 cartel operatives were caught in the disorientation field, immediately losing tactical cohesion as they struggled against the overwhelming sensory input. The civilian captives, though affected, were less severely impacted due to their different positions within the effect radius. Jackson moved with practiced efficiency, utilizing the disorientation window to approach from the southern angle, deploying targeted incapacitation measures against each cartel operative. Modified rubber projectiles delivered with precision to key motor control points, namely the brachial plexus and peroneal nerve clusters, temporarily disabled their ability to maintain weapon control or coordinated movement. Within 20 seconds, all 4 cartel operatives were incapacitated, and Jackson had reached the civilian captives, pulling them clear of the disorientation field's effective radius. Tangos neutralized, civilians secured, he reported, his voice calm despite the rapidly executed operation. No permanent injuries, estimated recovery time 4 to 6 minutes before motor function returns. Copy that. Extract civilians to safe position Alpha and prepare for potential counterattack from the main element. Even as Jackson moved the civilians to safety, Ramon reported movement from the Eastern Cartel position. They've detected something's wrong with their Western element. Deploying two-man team to investigate. Anticipated response, Blackwood acknowledged. Marcus, intensify communications disruption. Let's keep them uncoordinated as long as possible. In the command center, Sarah watched the operation unfold with the clinical detachment of a combat surgeon who had witnessed countless operations. Elena monitored all surveillance feeds, ensuring no unexpected developments escaped their attention. Deacon had moved to a concealed overwatch position covering the eastern approach, his rifle trained on key targets but held in reserve unless absolutely necessary. Jackson, Satrep on civilians? Minor contusions from initial cartel contact, no serious injuries. They're disoriented but cooperative. They stumbled into the operation by accident. Routine fence checking on their property boundary. Keep them secure and separated from the neutralized cartel team. When tactical situation permits, we'll facilitate their extraction from the area. The immediate crisis resolved, Blackwood returned his attention to the main cartel element at the eastern approach. The two-man team dispatched to check on their western counterparts would discover the neutralized operators within minutes, immediately escalating the situation from reconnaissance to active engagement. Time to implement our direct approach to Vega, Blackwood decided. Marcus established the connection to his personal device. Marcus activated the communication system he'd prepared, creating a direct link to the device identified as belonging to the cartel commander. Channel open, secured, and untraceable. Blackwood took the handset, speaking in fluent Spanish. Commander Vega, this is the individual in charge of the installation you're currently surveilling. I suggest we discuss the situation like professionals before it deteriorates further. After a brief pause, a controlled voice responded. You have my attention. Your tactical capabilities are unexpected. Your Western element has been neutralized non-lethally. The civilians they intercepted are unharmed and will be released when the situation resolves. I'm communicating directly to prevent unnecessary casualties on either side. Through surveillance, they watched Vega move slightly away from his team, maintaining operational security by ensuring his conversation wasn't overheard. You've created an unfortunate situation, Vega replied. My mission parameters are non-negotiable. I understand professional obligations, Blackwood countered. But you should be aware that your actual objective, Dr. Mitchell's research, is not physically present at this location. A slight shift in Vega's posture revealed the impact of this information. Explain. The materials your employer seeks were relocated to secure storage when we detected your initial reconnaissance. The doctor herself remains under our protection, but the research is beyond your reach regardless of the tactical outcome here. This was partly true. The most critical research had been digitally transferred to secure servers as part of their emergency protocols, though physical copies remained in the compound's vault. Vega conferred briefly with Dr. Muller, the exchange appearing heated even from a distance. My client is skeptical of your claim, Vega finally responded. He insists the materials must be recovered, along with the doctor herself. That's not possible, Blackwood stated firmly. But I'm authorized to propose an alternative arrangement. Specific portions of the research could be provided, with certain conditions and limitations. Another consultation between Vega and Muller followed, more extended and clearly contentious. Through high-powered audio surveillance, fragments of their conversation became audible, Muller insisting on complete acquisition, Vega arguing for a tactical reassessment given the unexpected resistance encountered. Your proposal is insufficient, Vega eventually replied. However, I am authorized to offer safe passage for all other personnel if Dr. Mitchell and her complete research are surrendered. That's not an option, Blackwood responded without hesitation. But you should consider your tactical reality carefully. Your Western element is neutralized. Your communications are compromised. You have no accurate assessment of our defensive capabilities. and reinforcements from legitimate authorities are already en route. This last statement was a calculated bluff. No such reinforcements had been called, as the team preferred to resolve the situation without official involvement. But Vega had no way to verify this claim given the communications disruption affecting his team. "You have 30 minutes to reconsider," Vega stated after another brief consultation with Mueller. "After that, we proceed with direct action, and I cannot guarantee the safety of anyone within your compound." The communication ended, leaving the tactical situation in temporary stalemate. Blackwood gathered the team in the command center, minus Jackson, who remained with the secured civilians, and Ramon, who maintained observation of the cartel forces. "Negotiations have bought us time, but they're preparing for assault," Blackwood summarized. "Their primary objective remains unchanged. They want Sarah and her research, with particular emphasis on regenerative trauma treatment protocols. Mueller is the driving force," Elena added. "Vega is a professional executing his assignment, but Mueller has personal investment in the outcome. That makes him both more dangerous and more vulnerable." "Options?" Blackwood asked, opening the floor to the team's collective expertise. "We could provide sanitized versions of the research," Sarah suggested. "Enough to appear cooperative without revealing the most critical elements." "Mueller would recognize the omissions immediately," Marcus countered. "He's an expert in the field." "What about leveraging the captured scout and Western element?" Elena proposed. "Negotiate and exchange their personnel for a limited data transfer." "Possibly," Blackwood acknowledged. "But they're clearly willing to sacrifice personnel for their primary objective." Deacon, who had joined them briefly from his Overwatch position, made a subtle hand gesture, suggesting a more aggressive approach involving neutralizing the command element directly. "High risk," Blackwood responded to the unspoken suggestion. "If executed imperfectly, it would trigger immediate retaliation against the compound." The tactical situation was complex, balancing multiple considerations: the safety of civilians and team members, maintaining their cover and sanctuary, preventing valuable research from falling into cartel hands, and resolving the situation without the kind of violence that would bring unwanted attention from authorities. As they debated options, Ramon's voice came through the communication system. "Movement at Eastern position. They're deploying specialized equipment. Looks like they're preparing for breach operations regardless of the negotiation window." Blackwood nodded grimly. As expected, they never intended to wait 30 minutes. "Colonel," Marcus called, his attention on the surveillance feeds. "I've intercepted communications from Pico Blanco. Additional reinforcements are being mobilized, at least 2 more vehicles with heavy weapons. Estimated arrival 45 minutes. The tactical calculation shifted immediately. While the team could potentially handle the current cartel force through their defensive preparations and superior position, additional heavy weapons would significantly change the balance. "We need to resolve this before reinforcements arrive," Blackwood decided. "Sarah, prepare a data package that appears comprehensive but contains strategic omissions in the most sensitive areas. Marcus, establish a secure transfer protocol that will appear legitimate but can be remotely corrupted after transmission." Both team members moved to implement these instructions immediately. "Elena, prepare our guest from the 1st Reconnaissance Team for exchange. He'll be our verification that we're operating in good faith." As the team executed these preparations, Blackwood's mind flashed back to a particularly challenging extraction in northern Syria, surrounded by hostile forces, negotiating with local tribal leaders while simultaneously preparing for combat operations if the negotiations failed. The same principles applied here: pursue multiple approaches simultaneously, maintain tactical flexibility, and create the impression of good faith while prepared for betrayal. "Ramon, has there been any change in Dr. Muller's position?" "Negative. He remains with the main element, still engaged in discussion with Vega. Body language suggests continuing disagreement about approach." "Leverage point," Blackwood noted. "Professional military commander versus civilian client with different priorities." Within 15 minutes, Sarah had prepared the modified research data, apparently complete, but with critical methodologies obscured and essential components subtly altered to prevent practical implementation. Marcus had established a transfer system that would appear secure, but contained hidden vulnerabilities that would allow remote access and corruption after delivery. Ready to re-engage, Blackwood informed the team, taking the communication device. Everyone maintain positions and be prepared for immediate action regardless of negotiation outcome. He re-established connection with Vega's device. Commander, we've prepared a counter-proposal. Partial data transfer immediately as demonstration of good faith, exchange of your reconnaissance team member, and agreement on terms for complete resolution. Vega's response came after a brief delay. Proceed with details. Initial data transfer will include Dr. Mitchell's basic regenerative protocols as verification of authenticity. Your scout will be returned at the perimeter as confirmation of our intentions. Further negotiation can establish terms for additional materials. Through surveillance, they observed the conversation between Vega and Muller becoming increasingly heated, the doctor clearly unhappy with any compromise, while the military commander appeared to favor a more pragmatic approach. Initial proposal accepted, Vega finally responded. Transfer the preliminary data. Delivery point for personnel exchange will be the eastern perimeter marker, 2 operators maximum from each side. Agreed, Blackwood confirmed, signaling Marcus to initiate the prepared data transfer while Elena prepared the captured scout for exchange. This initial agreement created a de-escalation window, but Blackwood harbored no illusions about the cartel's ultimate intentions. The data transfer and prisoner exchange were merely tactical maneuvers in a continuing operation, not genuine steps toward resolution. Jackson, status on Western position? Neutralized tangos secured and separated from civilians. Civilians are calm but concerned. I've explained they'll be safely escorted from the area once the situation permits. Maintain position and security. Be prepared for rapid response if Eastern engagement deteriorates. As the data transfer completed, Marcus confirmed successful transmission. Package delivered. Transfer appears secure, vulnerabilities undetected. They'll need approximately 20 minutes for preliminary verification by Muller. Enough time to complete the personnel exchange and reassess, Blackwood noted. Elena, proceed with prisoner preparation. Deacon will provide overwatch from position Bravo. The prisoner exchange represented both opportunity and vulnerability. Moving outside their defensive perimeter created exposure, but also allowed direct observation of the cartel forces and potential intelligence gathering about their equipment and disposition. Elena prepared the captured scout for transfer, securing him with restraints designed to appear conventional, but that would release automatically 5 minutes after exchange, long enough to maintain the appearance of security while preventing the cartel from having to waste time on removal. Remember the Kabul extraction, Blackwood told her as she prepared to depart with the prisoner. Maintain direct line to the exchange point, no deviation regardless of what they suggest. Visual contact with Deacon at all times. Elena nodded, her expression focused. The reference to Kabul was meaningful, a previous operation where apparent prisoner exchange had been used as distraction for an ambush. The team had developed specific protocols for such scenarios afterward. Through their surveillance network, they tracked Elena and the prisoner approaching the designated exchange point, while from the cartel's side, 2 operators escorted a secured vehicle toward the same location. Deacon maintained overwatch from his concealed position, his rifle trained on the cartel escorts with surgical precision. The exchange proceeded with professional efficiency. Elena releasing the scout at precisely the same moment the cartel operators stepped away from their vehicle. No words were exchanged, both sides maintaining operational security through silence. As Elena returned to the compound perimeter, the surveillance systems captured detailed imagery of the cartel operators, their equipment, weapons, communications devices, and tactical positioning. This intelligence would prove valuable regardless of how the situation developed. Exchange completed successfully, Elena reported upon return. Visual confirmation of 12 operators at forward position, heavy weapons being prepared despite negotiation window. They're going through the motions while preparing for assault. As expected, Blackwood acknowledged. The exchange was tactical rather than genuine. Gives both sides breathing room to prepare next moves. Through their surveillance, they observed Dr. Muller reviewing the transferred data on specialized equipment, his expression shifting from initial satisfaction to growing suspicion as he proceeded through the materials. He's recognizing the strategic omissions, Sarah noted, watching his behavior. Sooner than I expected. He's quite good. Within minutes, Vega was on the communication channel again, his tone noticeably harder. The provided data is incomplete and deliberately altered. This violates our agreement. The preliminary data was provided exactly as described, Blackwood countered smoothly. Complete protocols would follow agreement on final terms. Your experts simply confirmed the authenticity of the source, which was the intended purpose of this phase. My client is unsatisfied with this approach, Vega replied, professional veneer thinning slightly. He requires the complete research and Dr. Mitchell's personal expertise. Final offer, surrender both, and all other personnel will be permitted to leave unharmed. That was never an option, Commander, as I've already stated. Perhaps your client doesn't understand the tactical situation fully. Through surveillance, they watched Muller gesturing emphatically, clearly pushing for immediate action while Vega maintained more cautious positioning. The division between military professionalism and civilian demands created exploitable friction. You have 15 minutes to reconsider, Vega stated flatly. After that, we proceed with direct action. The communication ended, leaving the tactical situation poised on the edge of open conflict. The team gathered quickly to assess their position and finalize response plans. They're committed to assault, Blackwood confirmed. The negotiation was procedural rather than substantive, buying time for both sides to prepare. Reinforcements from Pico Blanco are 30 minutes out, Marcus updated. Heavy weapons mounted on vehicles, additional personnel. Which means we need to resolve this situation within that window, Blackwood concluded. One way or another. Sarah, who had remained composed throughout the escalating situation, spoke with quiet determination. I won't be the reason this team is compromised or endangered. The research can be reconstructed elsewhere if necessary. We don't sacrifice our own, Blackwood stated with finality. That's never been how this team operates, and it won't start today. The team moved with focused efficiency to their final defensive preparations. Jackson secured the civilians in the compound's most protected area, ensuring their safety regardless of how the situation developed. Ramon maintained observation on the cartel forces, reporting their continuing preparations for assault. Deacon remained in overwatch position, his rifle trained on priority targets, but held in reserve unless absolutely necessary. They're deploying to assault positions, Ramon reported. Standard three-point approach, utilizing terrain features for cover. Primary breach team at eastern approach, supporting elements north and south. Expected deployment, Blackwood acknowledged. Activate final defensive measures on my mark. The compound's defensive systems had been designed with precisely this scenario in mind, layered countermeasures that could be activated selectively to channel enemy movement, create confusion, and provide maximum tactical advantage while minimizing casualties. As the cartel forces moved into final position, Blackwood gave the command. Execute pattern Omega. Immediately, the outermost defensive layer activated, specialized terrain denial systems that rendered certain approaches impassable through non-lethal but highly effective methods. Targeted electromagnetic pulse devices disabled sensitive equipment in specific zones. Directional sound projectors created disorientation effects in carefully defined areas. The cartel forces responded with professional discipline despite the countermeasures, adjusting their approach vectors and maintaining tactical cohesion. Their training was evident in how quickly they adapted to the changing battlefield conditions. "They're good," Elena observed, watching their response through the surveillance network. "But they're still following predictable assault patterns." "Which works to our advantage," Blackwood confirmed. "Execute Phase 2. The second defensive layer activated. More aggressive countermeasures designed to separate and isolate assault elements. Specialized smoke deployment systems created visibility barriers between team members. Targeted electronic warfare measures scrambled their communications devices individually rather than collectively, creating inconsistent failure patterns that increased confusion. Through their surveillance, they watched the assault falter as coordination broke down between elements. The professional discipline remained, but tactical coherence became increasingly difficult to maintain as each operator experienced different environmental challenges. At the center of the cartel position, Vega struggled to maintain command control as the carefully planned assault disintegrated into isolated elements operating independently. Dr. Muller, still present despite the tactical risk, appeared increasingly agitated as the operation deviated from projected outcomes. Now for the key move, Blackwood decided, watching the developing situation with clinical detachment. "Marcus, implement Operation Phantom Echo." Marcus activated a specialized system the team had developed specifically for scenarios requiring psychological rather than physical deterrence. Using the cartel's own compromised communications equipment, the system introduced apparent transmissions from non-existent forces surrounding their position, creating the illusion of a much larger opposing force converging on their location. The effect was immediate and profound. Even professional operators relied on accurate situational awareness, and the sudden appearance of multiple additional threats from unexpected vectors created critical uncertainty about the tactical environment. Through their surveillance, they watched Vega receiving these apparent reports, his practiced composure showing the first signs of strain as the operational picture became increasingly confused. Dr. Muller's agitation had transformed into visible concern as the previously straightforward extraction operation collapsed into apparent encirclement. "They're initiating tactical repositioning," Ramon reported, observing their movement patterns. "Defensive posture rather than continuing assault. Consolidating forces around command element." "Perfect," Blackwood nodded. "Time for direct engagement." He reactivated the communication link to Vega's device. "Commander, your position is compromised. Your assault elements are isolated and contained. Your reinforcements from Pico Blanco have been intercepted by federal authorities responding to reports of armed activity in the region." This last statement was another calculated bluff, but delivered with the absolute conviction that made it impossible to dismiss without verification. Verification that Vega couldn't obtain due to their continued communications disruption. Additionally, Blackwood continued, "We've identified Dr. Heinrich Muller in your company, a German national wanted by Interpol for multiple violations of medical ethics regulations and illegal human experimentation. His presence has been reported to appropriate authorities." Through surveillance, they observed the impact of this statement on both men. Vega's professional calculation visibly shifting as he assessed this new dimension of risk, Muller's expression transforming from frustration to unmistakable alarm. "I'm offering you a professional courtesy, Commander," Blackwood concluded. "Withdraw your forces immediately, and this remains a private matter between our respective organizations. Continue, and it becomes an international incident involving multiple agencies, an outcome I suspect your employers would find most displeasing." The surveillance feed showed Vega and Muller in intense discussion, the doctor's gestures becoming increasingly desperate, while the commander maintained more controlled demeanor. The fundamental conflict between their priorities, Muller's singular focus on acquiring the research versus Vega's broader responsibility for operational success and personnel safety, had reached breaking point under the tactical pressure. You have 5 minutes to initiate withdrawal, Blackwood added, pressing the psychological advantage. After that, we cannot guarantee containment of the situation. After ending the transmission, Blackwood turned to his team. Maintain all defensive measures at maximum effectiveness. If they choose withdrawal, we facilitate without interference. If they continue assault, we implement final countermeasures. The team watched through their surveillance network as the cartel position erupted into apparent conflict, Mueller gesturing emphatically, Vega's responses becoming increasingly forceful. The professional military discipline that had characterized the operation showed signs of fracturing under the competing pressures. They're breaking, Elena observed. The operation is falling apart internally. Finally, Vega's communication device activated. We will withdraw, he stated simply, professional pride evident in his controlled tone. But this matter remains unresolved. Understood, Commander, Blackwood acknowledged. We'll maintain non-engagement during your withdrawal. Your personnel at the western position will be released unharmed once your main element has cleared the area. Through their surveillance, they watched the cartel forces implementing a disciplined withdrawal, maintaining defensive positioning while consolidating toward their vehicles. Dr. Mueller appeared to be under effective custody, 2 operators flanking him and physically directing his movement when he attempted to continue the argument. Marcus, verify withdrawal direction and maintain surveillance until they're beyond our perimeter, Blackwood ordered. Ramon, coordinate with Jackson for release of detained personnel once main element has cleared designated safe distance. They're actually leaving, Sarah noted, a hint of disbelief in her voice. I didn't expect Mueller to give up so easily. He's not giving up, Blackwood corrected. Vega is exercising tactical authority despite his client's objections. Professional operators recognize when a position is untenable, regardless of mission parameters. Dawn broke over the desert landscape as the team maintained vigilant surveillance of the cartel's withdrawal. The tension that had gripped the compound for the past 18 hours gradually eased as Marcus confirmed the main cartel element had returned to Pico Blanco and appeared to be dismantling their forward operating base. Satellite imagery confirms their packing equipment, he reported. Vehicle movements suggest preparation for complete withdrawal rather than repositioning. Blackwood nodded, the fatigue of continuous operations visible only in the slight tightness around his eyes. Maintain surveillance until they've cleared the region completely. I want confirmation they've left our territory before we stand down. The team had gathered in the command center, each member showing the controlled exhaustion that came after sustained high-intensity operations. Jackson had safely transported the Morales brothers back to their ranch after the cartel forces cleared the area, providing a cover story about military training exercises to explain their detention. The brothers, grateful for their rescue and respectful of the team's obvious capabilities, had agreed to maintain discretion about the incident. They'll be back, Sarah said quietly, breaking the contemplative silence. Mueller won't abandon his pursuit of the research that easily. Agreed, Elena confirmed. But they'll approach differently next time. Direct confrontation proved ineffective. They'll try infiltration, electronic penetration, or proxy acquisition through third parties. All of which we're prepared for, Blackwood replied. But this incident confirms our security protocols need reassessment. They located us despite 5 years of careful concealment. The implications hung in the air. Their sanctuary had been compromised, their carefully constructed anonymity breached. The life they had built here might no longer be sustainable in its current form. Options? Blackwood asked, opening the floor to the team's collective wisdom. We could relocate, Marcus suggested. Implement the contingency identities and facilities we established in Montana or the Carolina coast. Running means starting over, Ramon countered. New perimeter security, new local intelligence network, new defensive preparations. Significant vulnerability during transition. Deacon made a subtle hand gesture, suggesting enhanced defensive measures against potential future threats rather than defensive repositioning. Proactive security has its place, Blackwood acknowledged. But escalation brings its own risks, particularly regarding official attention. Sarah, who had remained largely silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. This was about my research. The threat targeted me specifically, endangering all of you by association. We're a team, Elena stated firmly. Always have been. The risk to one is managed by all. But the risk exists because of my work, Sarah persisted. Work that clearly has value I underestimated. Blackwood studied her with the perceptive gaze that had always seen beyond words to the underlying currents. You're considering options we haven't discussed yet. Sarah nodded, her decision apparently made during the long hours of the confrontation. My research was intended to save lives, soldiers with catastrophic injuries who might otherwise die in the field. It was never meant to extend the lifespan of cartel leaders or enhance their operational capabilities. What are you suggesting? Jackson asked. Legitimate publication through proper channels, Sarah replied. The complete methodology, treatment protocols, equipment specifications, everything released simultaneously to multiple medical journals and research institutions worldwide. The team absorbed this proposal in thoughtful silence. The strategic implications were significant. Open-source deployment, Marcus said, understanding immediately. Removing the research's black market value by making it universally available. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. If everyone has access to the methodologies, no one gains special advantage from possessing them. The research becomes worthless as a target for organizations like the Salazars. While simultaneously advancing trauma medicine globally, Elena added, seeing the dual purpose, potentially saving thousands of lives. Blackwood considered the proposal carefully. Publication means potential attention. Medical breakthroughs of this significance attract notice from the scientific community, possibly leading to questions about your background and current activities. I've considered that, Sarah acknowledged. I would need to emerge partially from our collective anonymity, establish limited professional credentials sufficient for publication credibility without compromising the team's security. The proposal represented a significant shift in their operational security model. Since establishing their sanctuary, all team members had maintained strict separation from their former professional identities, operating only through carefully constructed cover personas when interaction with the outside world became necessary. It's not without precedent, Elena noted. Limited professional engagement under controlled conditions. Many former operators established selective public profiles while maintaining operational security for more sensitive activities. The discussion continued as sunlight filled the command center, the team working through implications and contingencies with the methodical thoroughness that had characterized their operations for decades. By mid-morning, they had reached consensus on a modified approach. Sarah would establish a limited professional presence sufficient for research publication, while the team would enhance security protocols to accommodate this controlled exposure. We adapt rather than retreat, Blackwood summarized. Maintain our sanctuary while adjusting security parameters to manage the new risk profile. As the team dispersed to implement various elements of the new security protocol, Sarah remained with Blackwood in the command center, the weight of recent events evident in her expression. I never anticipated my work would make us a target, she said quietly. All those years in field hospitals, documenting techniques that saved lives under impossible conditions, it was about preserving what others were willing to sacrifice, not creating something worth killing for. Value attracts attention, legitimate and otherwise, Blackwood replied. Your research has value because it represents hope for people facing desperate circumstances. The Salazars simply demonstrated how far some will go to monopolize that hope for themselves. Sarah nodded, her clinical detachment softening slightly. Publishing means my research will save lives beyond the battlefield, civilian trauma victims, accident survivors, people who might otherwise not have second chances. while simultaneously protecting this team by removing the incentive for further aggression, Blackwood added. Tactically sound on multiple levels. The exchange illustrated the unique balance the team had always maintained, addressing human impact while simultaneously calculating strategic implications. This duality had made them exceptional operators during their military service and continued to guide their decisions in civilian life. By afternoon, Marcus had established the digital architecture necessary for Sarah's limited professional reemergence, secure communication channels, verified publication pathways, and anonymized submission protocols that would protect the team's location while enabling her research to reach legitimate medical institutions. Everything's in place, he confirmed. Publication can proceed through secured channels whenever you're ready. Sarah reviewed the prepared materials. Years of meticulous research compiled into formats accessible to the medical community, with careful omission of any details that might reveal their location or true identities. The work represented not just scientific advancement, but her personal journey from military surgeon to something more complex. A healer who had witnessed humanity at both its worst and its finest. It's ready, she confirmed. Begin transmission to the selected journals and research institutions. As the research data transferred through secured channels to medical publications worldwide, the team gathered on the compound's eastern ridge, watching the sunset cast long shadows across the desert landscape. The tactical displays in the command center confirmed the cartel forces had completely withdrawn from the region, returning to their traditional territories further south. They've accepted the tactical reality, Ramon observed. Professional response, regardless of their clients' desires. For now, Elena cautioned, but we remain vigilant. Patterns suggest they'll attempt electronic penetration next, trying to access our systems remotely rather than risking physical confrontation again. Let them try, Marcus replied with professional confidence. Our electronic countermeasures have been upgraded significantly based on their operational patterns. Blackwood watched his team with quiet pride. 5 years ago, when they'd established the sanctuary after the betrayal in Kandahar, some had questioned whether elite operators could adapt to civilian existence without losing the edge that had kept them alive through countless missions. The past 24 hours had answered that question definitively. Their skills remained sharp, their coordination seamless, their adaptability undiminished. We've transformed this place, Jackson observed, gesturing toward the compound and surrounding terrain. From empty desert to something worth defending. It's not just the place, Blackwood replied. We've transformed ourselves as well. From weapons directed by others to individuals making our own choices about where and how to apply our capabilities. This philosophical observation was unusual from their typically action-oriented leader, but the events of the past day had prompted reflection in all of them. They had faced their first direct threat as civilians rather than military operators, responding with the same precision and discipline that had characterized their former lives, but now in defense of something they had chosen for themselves. The research publication will change things, Sarah said, joining them on the ridge after confirming successful transmission to all targeted institutions. Not just for potential adversaries, but for us as well. How so? Elena asked. It represents stepping back into the world, even in limited form, Sarah explained. Acknowledging that complete separation isn't always the best service we can offer. Sometimes engagement, carefully managed, creates more security than isolation. The team absorbed this perspective thoughtfully. Their sanctuary had been established as escape from a world that had betrayed them, but perhaps complete separation had its own limitations. Balance, Blackwood nodded. Controlled engagement where beneficial, maintain security where essential. Adapting our model based on experience rather than rigid adherence to initial parameters. This adaptability had always been their greatest strength as operators, assessing conditions on the ground and adjusting tactics accordingly rather than following predetermined approaches regardless of changing circumstances. Now they were applying that same flexibility to their civilian existence. As darkness fell completely, the stars emerged with striking clarity in the desert sky. The team remained on the ridge a while longer, each processing the events and implications in their own way, unified by shared experience and mutual trust that had been tested and confirmed once again. The compound below, illuminated by minimal security lighting, appeared unremarkable to casual observation, exactly as designed. But beneath its ordinary exterior lay sophisticated systems, redundant security measures, and a team whose capabilities few would suspect until directly confronted. "We should get some rest," Blackwood eventually suggested. "Maintain regular security rotations, but everyone needs recovery time after sustained operations." The team moved back toward the compound, their movements relaxed but still carrying the subtle awareness of trained operators continuously assessing their surroundings. The immediate threat had passed, but vigilance remained their natural state. In the days that followed, Sarah's research began appearing in medical journals worldwide, creating exactly the impact they had anticipated. The medical community responded with immediate interest, recognizing the significance of the advanced trauma protocols and regenerative techniques. Questions about the author's background emerged but were deflected through the carefully constructed professional persona Marcus had established. Simultaneously, their surveillance systems detected multiple attempted electronic penetrations of their networks, sophisticated probes that suggested cartel-funded hackers attempting to access their systems remotely. Marcus's enhanced security measures deflected these attempts effortlessly, capturing valuable intelligence about the attackers' methods and objectives in the process. "They're persistent," he reported, tracking the ongoing attempts. "But predictable. Still focusing on accessing Sarah's research data, unaware it's already been publicly released. Maintain electronic countermeasures and continue gathering intelligence on their methods," Blackwood directed. "Their persistence provides valuable insight into their capabilities and priorities." 2 weeks after the confrontation, Sheriff Mendez visited the compound, ostensibly for a social call but clearly seeking information about recent events. The team maintained their cover story, private security consultants conducting training exercises that may have been observed by locals. "Interesting coincidence," Mendez noted carefully. "Those exercises happening right when Border Patrol reported cartel movement in the region suddenly stopped." "Fortunate timing," Blackwood replied neutrally. The sheriff studied him thoughtfully. "The Morales brothers mentioned something about getting caught up in a military training exercise while checking fence lines. Said some government contractors helped them out of a tight spot." "Good to hear they're all right," Blackwood responded. "Civilian safety is always priority in any operational area." Mendez nodded, accepting the non-explanation with professional courtesy. His expression suggested he understood far more than was being explicitly stated, but recognized the value of maintaining certain fictions. A month after the confrontation, satellite imagery confirmed what local intelligence had already suggested. The cartel's forward operating base at Pico Blanco had been completely abandoned, all equipment and personnel withdrawn from the region. Intercepted communications indicated the Salazar cartel had refocused their attention on traditional territories, their elite tactical unit deployed to counter incursions from rival organizations rather than pursuing external objectives. The medical community had embraced Sarah's research with enthusiasm that exceeded even her expectations. 3 major research hospitals had already implemented her trauma protocols, reporting significant improvement in survival rates for catastrophic injuries. The professional acknowledgement brought quiet satisfaction, though she maintained the careful distance their security required. "The cartel's defeat was undeniable," Marcus observed, reviewing the latest intelligence reports with the team. "Their elite squad entered our territory with overwhelming confidence and departed with nothing to show for their efforts except damaged reputation and wasted resources." Though some questioned the extent of Blackwood's actions during the confrontation, most celebrated the powerful message sent. America does not bow to intimidation, even in its most remote territories. The team's response had demonstrated that professional discipline and tactical preparation could overcome numerical superiority, especially on terrain chosen and prepared by defenders. Blackwood, humble yet firm in his leadership, quietly stepped back from the limelight as the team resumed their regular routines. The incident had solidified their commitment to this sanctuary they had built together, while simultaneously opening carefully managed channels to the world they had previously avoided entirely. "We've evolved," Elena reflected as they gathered for their weekly tactical review. "From running from the past to selectively engaging with the future, on our terms, within our parameters." The team continued their duties without fanfare, their daily activities returning to the quiet rhythms established over 5 years of coexistence. Yet something fundamental had shifted in their collective perspective. The confrontation had confirmed their capabilities remained intact, their coordination seamless, their effectiveness undiminished by years of civilian life. Most importantly, they had maintained their moral clarity throughout the engagement, neutralizing threats without unnecessary casualties, protecting innocent civilians caught in the crossfire, and ultimately resolving the situation through strategic thinking rather than brute force. The discipline that had made them exceptional operators continued to guide their actions, now directed by their own ethical choices rather than external command structures. Their story stood as testament to an enduring American truth, that genuine strength lies not in aggression but in preparedness, resolve, and the unwavering commitment to justice and liberty for all. In a remote desert valley, a forgotten Black Ops team had demonstrated that professional excellence combined with moral purpose could overcome even the most determined adversaries. As evening settled over the compound, Blackwood completed his daily perimeter check, scanning the horizon with the same vigilance that had kept his team alive through countless operations. The desert stretched vast and seemingly empty in all directions, but he knew appearances could be deceiving. Their recent experience had confirmed the world could still find them, despite their careful concealment. Yet rather than fear this reality, the team had embraced it, transforming potential vulnerability into renewed purpose. They would maintain their sanctuary while engaging selectively with the wider world, their exceptional skills now directed toward protecting what they had built together and contributing value on their own terms. What do you think about this incredible stand? Do you believe strength alone guarantees justice, or does real power lie in partnership, strategy, and bravery? Share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life stories of courage in the face of overwhelming odds.